What's my age again? What's my age again? All the small things. Na 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 na.
Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. I'm your host, sabrinasalvati. Doobie-doobie-doo. 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 I'm your host, sabrinasalvati.
Hello, happy Thursday, guys. Welcome to Sab's podcast. I'm your host, Sabrina Salvati. If you are new, I want to let you know that Sab's podcast is a part of Revolutionary Blackout Network. You can catch me there on Thursdays and Fridays, and you can catch me here Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, and Sunday. Almost forgot there for a second. Shout out to everyone watching on YouTube, Rockfin, and Twitter, and welcome back, guys. We have a packed show tonight. I do want to give you a quick announcement. Tomorrow night, instead of going live at 8 p.m. Eastern time, I'm going live earlier at 6 p.m. Eastern time because Kim Iversen is coming on. So in order to accommodate Kim, I will be going early tomorrow night. Also, tomorrow afternoon, I will be going live earlier on RBN at 2 p.m. Eastern time. Lucy from Indie News Network is going to join me to talk about her confrontation with Steven Dosinger at Marianne Williamson's event. And she also has a new plan and strategy for electoralism, thanks to herself and Roger Meadows. So stay tuned for that. If you're not signed up for my newsletter, please sign up for that because I do send out notifications via my Substack. So definitely sign up for that if you're not. That way you'll get that reminder tomorrow that I'm going live at 6 p.m. Eastern time instead of 8 p.m. Eastern time. But anywho, welcome. Welcome. So much to discuss tonight. Want to give quick shout outs to people in the chat. What's up, Baba? I think Kim did an amazing job trying to drill it in RFK's head that people are done with Dem, and he's not going to get any voters to switch to vote for Dem. When Jimmy Dore tried telling him he no like it. I like that phrase. No likey, no likey, he no likey. What's up, Yeska? I answered your poll question with no, because the dollar needs to be brought down, no matter what it takes. The USA is extorting the world for way too long. Karma is a thing, you know. Interesting. What's going on? Robert says, a lot of you need to stop being fooled by the likes of Tucker. He goes where the wind blows. He was the biggest neocon supporter not too long ago. I hate when the left thinks these phonies are allies. We'll talk about that, Robert. We will get into that. Shout out to Joe OWS. Grow food, not lawns. Community gardens in food desert communities must be addressed. We will not get out of this alone. We have only each other. That is true. I've talked about that before on the show. Shout out to Ashura. Why is 19% the lowest number? That should be more. I don't know. I haven't looked at that poll since I posted it earlier. But if you haven't had a chance to do so, go ahead and answer that question on that poll. I'm curious to hear what you guys have to say. Greetings, Marnock, giving shout outs to Baba. Kim Iversen is getting canceled, nothing less. Her tweet that CJ covered in that Fiorella and Misty exposed says a lot of Kim's comfy PMC stance. Well, Kim will be here tomorrow, so I can talk to her about that when she comes tomorrow. Shout out to Joe, says, hi, perfect people. Greetings, Screaming Palm. Depressing poll results. Now you guys got me worried. I'm curious what that poll says now. What's going on? Yepek says, I'm probably going to fall asleep. I'm sorry. I like the video in advance, though, Sabby. Thank you. Greetings, Hannah says, yes, I'm concerned about the dollar. Shout out to John, says, I retired in Mexico. My rent went up $75 because the dollar is weak as fuck. Interesting. Nice to hear from people abroad, international community. It's nice to hear from you. What's going on, Willem? The way I see it, dollar's power is set by elites anyhow. Either we enforce MMT, which is what cash was originally supposed to be, vehicle of value, not value itself, or we let them yank us around. What's going on? Angela says, greetings, Sabby and chat. Happy Thursday and hope everyone is ready for the weekend. Cheers to the freaking weekend. Sorry, it's part of a song. What's going on, Rodrigo? Do you personally believe RFK will break away from the Dem party, Sabby? Hold that thought. When I get to that story, I'll tell you what I think. Shout out to Lawrence, who's a Sabby member, says Doobie Doobie Door 2024. What's going on, Mastermind Hour? OMG, she really looks like Winnie the Pooh in that thumbnail. No way. I can't unsee it now. Oh, why'd you say that? Oh man, that's rough. What's going on, Gamer for Life says hello. Shout out to Delthea, who's a Sabby member, says hello, all you beautiful people. Show your love. Hit the like button, subscribe, join, become a patron. Delthea is better at this than me because I don't even tell people half the time to do these things. But yes. What's up, Bryce says back again for another live Sabby when I get buckets. Shout out to Larez. Hello, Sabby, Eric, and Sabby fam. Hit the like, thumbs. US dollar will collapse and change our lives. What's going on? Beverly says, what's up to Gamer? Hope you are well. Shout out to Eric T. Red, who's a Sabby member, says, hey there, Thursday peeps. Greetings, Sean Miller says, yeah. What's going on? Corey, who's a Sabby member, says, happy Thursday, Sabby fam. Greetings, James says, sup, Gamer. Gamer, I told you you're popular. You are popular. Greetings, Old Man Barker says, na, 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 na. Oh, na, 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 na. We were singing Blink 182 earlier, brought back some memories. Memories of Jello shots, shotgunning beer, strip poker, wet t-shirt contest. You get the idea. Shout out to ACAB says, hello, everyone. Greetings. Ben, who's a Sabby member, says, hi, y'all. What's up? LB says, hello. Greetings. Dan sends a heart of love. Shout out to, making sure I'm skipping ahead, Mr. X says, hello all. Greetings, Jess says, love my Thursdays. I get a double dose of Sabby. Thank you so much. All right, let's jump ahead here. Greetings, Saul says, hey, all peace. What's going on? Desert Mantis says, yo, R&B family. Shout out to Roger Meadows. Thanks for the super chat. Carol Dunham Bryant died at 88, but Emmett lived to 14. Yes, that's right. I heard about that she finally passed away. This is the woman that accused Emmett Till of catcalling her, which you could not do back then if you were a black man or black boy, because Emmett Till was a boy to a white woman. I heard about that. Shout out to Lyle. Thank you for the super chat. If Trump were president and doing all the things Biden is doing in Ukraine, Democrats would have been losing their minds. But because it's Biden doing it, it doesn't matter. Bingo. That's the problem with the two-party system. Shout out to Julia says, hello, Sappy. I'm glad East are devalued the dollar because they need the dollar to pay I think you mean all the military bases around the world. Shout out to Night Rider says doom and gloom. Okay. Greetings, Pachico, who's a Sabby member, says, yay, Sabby. Yay, Pachico. Shout out to Myra says hi from South Africa. Welcome. Love the international community. Shout out to the Oracle says Jerry Springer died as well. I saw that. I honestly didn't realize Jerry Springer was still alive, to be honest with you. I forgot about Jerry Springer. But those of us who were around in the 90s, we remember the Jerry Springer show. Boy, that was something, wasn't it? People would come into the Jerry Springer show and just throw chairs just because. Just because. But Jerry Springer was also a politician before he was a talk show host. A lot of people didn't realize that. Okay. Quick shout out to everyone who is a Sabby patron. Let's give it up for the peeps who keep the lights on around here. Thank you guys so much for your support. If you're interested in being a Sabby patron, I have 5 categories: members, Sabbies, Sabsters, Sabinators, and of course, the ultimate. All of their names are listed here. You can also see their names scrolling across the bottom of the screen there on the ticker. Thank you so much. And a big shout out to a new Sabby patron. Let's give it up for All One. Over here, we call them newbies. Thank you so much. When I saw that name, it reminded me of that R&B group called All for One. I saw them a couple of years ago. They still perform, believe it or not. They had that song called I Swear. But when I saw them a couple of years ago, they only had 3 members. So one of them wasn't there. I think the Kenny G guy was absent. Yeah, the guy who kind of looked like Kenny G, I don't think he was with them. No, he wasn't with them. It was the guy that looks like George Michaels. It was the guy, the black guy that used to have the dreads. He doesn't have dreads anymore. And then it was the other white guy, the lead singer. Yes, it was those 3. So I don't know what happened to the George Michael dude. Or not George Michael, but the Kenny G guy. Anywho, let's go ahead and get started, guys. Let's get into that thumbnail. Interesting stuff to unpack tonight. We got to get into it. Tonight, we are discussing Kim Iversen and RFK Jr. Shock. Yes, Kim Iversen did interview him, and there is one particular area of that interview that I want to focus on, and I think we all need to pay attention to. I got a lot to say there. We're also going to talk about Tucker Carlson claps back. Tucker Carlson is finally breaking his silence since he was fired from Fox News. We're going to get into that. We're also going to discuss Jill Stein Twitter files. Yes. The Twitter files are still continuing, guys. I don't know if you realize that. We are going into Twitter files number 21. What does this have to do with Jill Stein? We'll get into that story. And we're also going to discuss China alert. Yes. What is happening there? Now, someone told me in the chat that Xi Jinping in this picture looks like Winnie the Pooh, and now I can't unsee it. I can't unsee it. I can't. Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Okie doke. Let's go ahead and dive in. Now, I was going to do a cold open, and then I forgot. So I'll just show that video when I get to that story. But we'll go ahead and get started with what is happening with the yuan. So if you had not heard, countries like China and Brazil decided to come together and put aside the US dollar. They decided to focus on their own form of currency, which is the yuan, the Chinese yuan. Now, it was just reported yesterday that apparently something really huge happened with the yuan in reference to the US dollar. Let's go ahead and get into it.
The greenback has been the mainstream reserve currency, and until recently, no one imagined that that could change anytime soon. With the Russia-Ukraine war, high commodity prices and also dwindling foreign exchange reserves have now challenged the greenback. And it is the Chinese yuan that seems to be emerging as a hot alternative for the American dollar. Our next poll gets you the details.
Here we go.
The US dollar has dominated international trade since the end of World War II. But after the onset of the Russia-Ukraine war, the greenback seems to be losing some of its sheen. De-dollarization has become the trend after several countries have expressed the need for an alternate currency to carry out trade. But the question is, why is the dollar losing popularity now? The dollar is losing its dominance after the US imposed sanctions on Russia for its war in Ukraine.
Bingo. That's a big one right there. What she just said. I want to say something really quick to Ashura. Ashura says it's Juan, like saying Wong in Spanish. No. We just had this conversation, didn't we, Eric? Eric and I just had this conversation, and notice in the video they pronounced it Yuan. So I thought that too. But anywho, listen to what she just said. When did the dollar start to lose its power? Listen to this.
The dollar is losing its dominance after the US imposed sanctions on Russia for its war in Ukraine.
That piece right there is very crucial. So I wanted you to hear that, because I don't want you to think that the dollar is just now losing its dominance because China and Brazil decided to come together and have their own currency and not focus on the US dollar. According to this, it actually started to lose its dominance when the US government put sanctions on Russia. Remember when I told you that those sanctions that the US put on Russia was not just going to hurt Russia? Remember, I told you this just a couple of days ago as well, that it hasn't just been hurting Russia. And actually, Russia seems to be beating the sanctions in the ways that the US government didn't think would happen. That it would also harm other countries like the UK, like Germany, like other parts of Europe, right? Countries that depended on that pipeline, which is now gone. But also the United States. Also the US dollar. I don't think a lot of people saw this coming. So just remember that. Because what you're going to hear on mainstream media going forward is they are going to blame this on the fact that China and Brazil and other countries decided to come together and decided to put the US dollar aside and focus on Yuan. But just go back to this video so you can remind yourself that it actually started to lose dominance when the US government put sanctions on Russia. Let's go on.
Cost of imports for neutral countries like India have become more expensive, especially since the US Fed started hiking borrowing rates to control inflation domestically. And it is the yuan that seems to be leading the race now as an alternate reserve currency to the dollar. For the first time in decades, the yuan became the most used currency for cross-border trade with China. That means countries trading with China are doing business in yuan rather than the US dollar.
That's huge. When we talk about trade, countries doing, except for us, of course, but countries now doing business with China, they're doing that trade through the use of yuan instead of the US dollar. Things are really changing, you guys. This is what I tried to warn people about. This is what happens when the US government wants to destroy other countries for years, for decades, wants to bully other countries for years, for decades. Eventually, those countries have two options. They can either allow themselves to be bullied and do what the US government wants them to do, or they can form an alliance of their own, kind of like the Avengers, and they can collaborate and work together against the US government. This was only a matter of time. Only a matter of time.
Given the volume of trade carried out by China, it is only natural that the government can create demand for its domestic currency. The rupee is fast emerging as another alternative reserve currency. India is one of the leading innovators in the payments landscape and is leveraging tech to make the rupee truly global.
That's another one. India is leveraging rupee, that's their currency, to make tech global. Did you ever think you would see a time when other countries would not necessarily depend on the US dollar anymore? And if you have a lot of tech businesses in India, this is a perfect way for them to go. It actually makes a lot of sense. Now, what were to happen if other countries in Europe decided to do the same thing? When we hear President Macron, and he's a little crazy, but we hear President Macron make this statement that Europe should no longer follow the US lead when it comes to some of these foreign affairs. In reference to this conflict between China and Taiwan, when you hear President Macron make a statement such as, we are not going to follow the US lead with this conflict. We are not going to go against China. Maybe Europe should be a third world power and start doing our own thing. Where else could that lead? Where else could that go? So if some of our European allies decide, we don't really want to be allies with you on this particular issue, what else would they change their mind about? And I ask this question again, When is it okay for an ally to disagree with us on a particular issue and say, we're going to take a back seat, you guys have at it? When is that okay? And if you look at this conflict with Russia and Ukraine, some would say that time is right now. Let's go on.
Several countries have started using the rupee for bilateral trade, marking a new era for economic power for the Asian giants. While the dollar is losing steam, its share in foreign reserves is well above 58%. The euro, the second most popular currency, is far behind with a 20% share in foreign reserves. And the share of the yuan and the rupee are negligible. But both China and India are ahead of the US in developing new payment systems like the central bank's digital currency and India's UPI, which completes transactions at a fraction of the cost of conventional payment methods such as SWIFT.
Let's go back to this picture here. I want you to see them shaking hands because this is a statement. Let me make something very clear. Xi Jinping has been making moves. He's been kicking ass and taking names. This guy's made more deals than businessmen that I know within the past. How many deals has he made? How many agreements has he made within the past month or so? He's made a deal with Saudi Arabia. He's made a deal with Brazil. He's made a deal with India. Who are we making deals with right now? A lot of people don't like us too much. A lot of people not too fond of the US government. I wonder why. But he is making deals. So if you see this here,
They are negligible. But both China and India are ahead.
you see, this is probably like the fourth time I've seen Xi Jinping shake hands with another foreign leader. I don't know, within the past couple weeks. He is actually the one who went to sit down with Vladimir Putin to say, okay, let's see how we can work together. Let's even talk about some type of peace negotiation. Where are we? Where is the US government when it comes to talking about a peace negotiation? Well, we found out through that leak from the Pentagon documents that the plan with Russia and Ukraine for the US government was actually not to end this anytime soon and to implement regime change in Russia. That's why you don't see us trying to make any peace negotiations. And that is to push Russia out of being a competitor. Now, why would that be? This all goes back to money. This all goes back to economics. The US government wants to continue to be the dominant world power. And when you have countries like China and Russia, given where they are right now economically, the US government sees those countries as a threat. And now you have China forming alliance with other foreign leaders to use new currency and to do their own thing. And you have BRICS. So I told you about a story recently with Professor Richard Wolff. I clipped that the other day, so it's on my channel if you just want to see the clip, where he was trying to warn people that the days of the dominant presence of the US empire is starting to change. The US empire is starting to fall. And this is a perfect example of it here. So China is continuing to make deals with other foreign leaders. And look, every time I see this man, he's smiling. Every time I see pictures of Xi Jinping, he seems to be smiling and just happy as can be. Everyone should pay attention to what's happening.
Ahead of the US in developing new payment systems like the central bank's digital currency and India's UPI, which completes transactions at a fraction of the cost of conventional payment methods such as SWIFT.
There you go.
Bureau Report, Yuan, World is One.
Yuan is
Yuan. So there's that piece. I have a little bit more information. I do want to give a little bit more detail in reference to this particular topic. Now, this was released yesterday, and I was like, oh, we have to talk about this tonight. Yuan overtakes dollar to become most used currency in China's cross-border transactions. Here it is. The yuan became the most widely used currency for cross-border transaction in China in March, overtaking the dollar for the first time. This is huge. Overtaking the dollar for the first time. That happened very quickly, didn't it? Wasn't it just in March we were talking about this agreement that they had with other countries to not use the US dollar as currency anymore? And just like that, overtakes the US dollar. Cross-border payments and receipts in yuan rose to a record 549.9 billion in March from 434.5 billion a month earlier. When I tell you this happened fast, this happened fast. The yuan was used in 48.4% of all cross-border transactions. That's almost half. Reuters calculated while the dollar share declined 46.7% from 48.6% a month earlier. That's how fast this is happening. The volume of cross-border transactions covers both the current and capital accounts. China has long been promoting the use of yuan to settle cross-border trades as part of an effort to internationalize the use of its currency. The yuan use in global trade finance remains low, though it has shown steady increases, and this is what we need to pay attention to. Sometimes the increase may not happen as fast globally, but if it's steadily increasing, you still need to keep an eye on that. Data from SWIFT showed that the yuan share of global currency transactions for trade finance rose to 4.5% in March, while the dollar accounted for 83.71%. So you got to pay attention to what is happening here. This should be huge. This should be huge news right now. Every major news outlet should be talking about this right now. Because Xi Jinping is not playing around. Not playing around. And you have to wonder, are other countries going to join along with this as well? So we have China, we have Brazil, we have India. Is everyone that's a part of BRICS, are they going to join as well? Is South Africa going to join along with this as well? I mean, what about Mexico? Right? There were talks of Mexico thinking about joining BRICS. So we have to keep an eye on this because China is making moves and taking names. Thank you for the super chat, Roger. Sabby, you described Color Me Bad, not All for One. That's right, Color Me Bad. I got the groups confused. Color Me Bad, those were the guys that I saw. Yeah, the guy that looks like Kenny G. I remember that. James says, after Nixon removed from gold standard, dollar had to be forced on others. Lyle says, thank you for the super chat. When I was a kid, the U.S. was the leader of the free world. Now China's the new leader of the free world. And there are some elements now. China isn't perfect. There's criticism to be made there as well. But when we talk about some of the progressive policies that some of us have been fighting for, there are some areas where China has made moves in that, like guaranteed housing for people. We don't have that here in the United States. I would argue that we should, but we don't. Thank you for the super chat, Rob. Speaking of economics, you go ahead and spin this right away. Oh, that's sweet. Thank you, Sabby Sabs. Thank you, Rob. That's so sweet. And shout out to Lyle for becoming a new Sabby member. Give Lyle a big whoop, 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 whoop. Night Gazer says, hello from Mexico. Hello. Love having an international community. Love to hear you guys' take on this. But when we talk about economics and where the U.S. stands right now, you have to think about some of the things that have been happening. And we'll start pre-pandemic, to be fair. The homelessness issue has increased in this country. It was increasing before the pandemic. Some people don't want to mention that, but it was. It increased even more after the pandemic. But that issue has not been resolved. They haven't decreased the rate of homelessness in this country. So there's that. Wages. We still don't have $15 federal minimum wage in this country. People are still making what, $7.25 an hour in some states, depending on where you live. Although it has been passed on the state level in certain states, but not all of them and not most of them. So we have a living wage issue still in this country. We have a housing issue still in this country, the homelessness issue in this country, and not to mention, there's the big one, the elephant in the room, that even in 2023, everyone still does not have health care in this country. More and more Americans are leaving the United States. You guys aware of that? More and more Americans are leaving the US and they're moving to countries like Canada and Mexico. They're moving to Europe. They're moving to China. I know people who have moved to China. They're moving to these other countries where they can have some of these progressive needs met. How long will that continue? I don't know. Falsification said, I'm trying to get to Spain. Yeah. Landrew, not only that, the trend is private equity owning 40% of all the housing by 2030. Yes. Yes. And you have to remember companies like BlackRock and companies like Vanguard buying real estate, buying houses, single family homes, flipping those homes, jacking up the price and making it more unaffordable for the average American. So when people tell you that we have a housing shortage, I push back on that. We do not have a housing shortage. We have enough housing for everyone. We just don't have enough housing that everyone can afford. And you got to realize companies like BlackRock are part of that. They're a part of that. I'll take that comment on Rockfin, Eric. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Anna. When's the last time anyone saw Biden in person? In this country, I'm convinced he's passed on. Suspect no debates. Oh, when is the last time we saw Biden in person? I don't know. I know he doesn't seem to be all with it. I know that much. All right, let's move on to our next story here. The Twitter files. They're not finished. The Twitter files are still continuing. And this time around, we have a Twitter file release from Matt Orfalea. You guys know him as Orf. So Matt, he makes a lot of videos. You may have seen them before on other left independent media shows. But Matt has also dived into the Twitter files. And this is Twitter file number 21. It's not just about what they consider to be Russian information. It's also about who they consider to be Russian assets. And that includes people like Jill Stein. Let's get into this one. This one is huge. Twitter Files 21, how to find Russians anywhere. This is some crazy stuff, man. Part 1, Project Osprey. After the 2016 election, the Senate Intel Committee asked Twitter to identify accounts from Russia's Internet Research Agency. But both Twitter and third-party researchers struggled to find Russian agents. Remember this, that they struggled to find it. Just keep that in mind. Matt goes on to say, at first, Twitter was only able to produce 22 plus 179 IRA linked accounts. Let me make this bigger for you. There we go. Democrat Mark Warner called the numbers inadequate on every level. Twitter went back to the drawing board in an analysis project called Osprey. Now, I want you to remember this name because Mark Warner, he's the same Democrat that led the bill for the Restrict Act. That's him. Do you see the similarities? He's the guy that wanted to ban TikTok. He led this. He wanted to ban TikTok. He's the guy that wants the government to be able to invade your private space, your home. If you have a router, wants to be able to spy on you. That is this guy. So of course he would be involved in reference to the Twitter files. Now there's a screenshot here Senator Blast Twitter presentation on Russia influence was inadequate on every level. He has another screenshot. Attorney-client communications, privileged and confidential, prepared at the direction of counsel. So here it is, Osprey Investigative Analysis. So that is the name of this particular project. Let's go on. In Project Osprey, Twitter counted 2 types of Russians. 1, a priori Russians, identified as Russian by outside researchers like Quintel. So there's the first one, a priori, and 2, inferred. Inferred Russians, identified by algorithm tracking signals like Cyrillic text or a Russian IP address. Now, why can this be problematic? Let's highlight Russian IP address. Let's say you just happen to be either on vacation in Russia, or let's just say you're actually there as a journalist. You're an American journalist, but you're in Russia at this point in time because you are covering a story. You are using your laptop, or you're using one that is provided for you there. 9 times out of 10, you may have a Russian IP address. Let's say you have a Twitter account. Does that mean that you're a Russian agent? No, it does not. That's why this method can be incredibly dangerous. Just because someone has a Russian IP address and is on Twitter doesn't mean they're a Russian agent. Let's go on. And he shows screenshots here of the same thing I just told you. So a priori Russian and inferred Russian. And I want to highlight this part here, strong signals. Sign up country is Russia based on IP address. Remember what I said, just because you live there doesn't mean that you are Russian. It doesn't mean you're working for the Russian government. User has a Russian phone carrier. This is hilarious to me. Medium signals. Email is Russian. Account language is Russian. User has logged in from any Russian IP address. Now, this started back in September 1st, 2016. Weak signals. And then it goes here. Username contains Cyrillic characters. Okay, so let's go on. This is so dangerous. I just think about so many people that I know that live abroad that obviously would have nothing to do with the government, so to speak. What? Christy Knight, Fiorella just twittered that she's being held in Finland and they keep asking her why she was in Russia. Oh boy. See what I'm talking about? You guys see what's happening here? Oh boy. I'll see what that's about. 4, this kind of analysis based on markers like type of email carrier or retweeting history can quickly become a Rorschach test where you see what you want to see. If you just look for that marker, then everything will look Russian, is how one industry analyst puts it. 100%. That's the point I was getting at. 5, even Twitter understood, noting Green Party candidate Dr. Jill Stein was captured by is Russian, the inferred Russians list. Twitter analysts commented on the overly broad nature of is Russian. This was Jill Stein. Let's put this part up here. One interesting exception was a tweet from Jill Stein, who is captured by is Russian due to sharing KDTs with several users who logged in from Russia, pointing to the overly broad nature of is Russian. So here's a tweet here from Jill Stein, and it says, if John Kerry did ask Ecuador to cut off Assange's internet access, what else is the U.S. hiding? So again, I would say that that is overreach. John Kerry wasn't even president of the United States. So this is one of the tweets that they are referring to in reference to Jill Stein. And you have to know that till this day, people are still calling Jill Stein a Russian asset or a Russian agent. It's crazy. Crazy stuff, man. Now, she was put on the inferred Russians list. Now, if we go back, I just want to show you what that list said. Identified by algorithm tracking signals like Cyrillic text or a Russian IP address. So they put her in this category. So let's go on here. Outrageous, says Stein, just more that Joe McCarthy would be proud of. And this is the point where we've gotten to in this country, like this McCarthy era. It's almost like it never really went away. And I remember reading about it, and I remember studying about it in school. And we can all remember that McCarthyism witch hunt that happened in this country, where people would just be accused of being a commie or a Russian asset. And it's just like the federal government or the FBI would come in and take them in. Now, this was under J. Edgar Hoover. This was all under him. Same thing with the Black Panthers. That was under J. Edgar Hoover. So we never really fully got away from that in this country. Now, it may not have been as rampant as it was back then, but there is still this idea that in some way, shape, or form, if you are not going along with the status quo or the mainstream media narrative, that you in some way, shape, or form must be a Russian agent. This type of Russophobia I've seen even when I was a kid, and Hollywood was a part of it. And I want to give you an example. Rocky IV. Rocky IV, who was the villain? Drago, right? He was the villain. He was from Russia. He was made to look like he was cold and harsh, and they had him kill his friend in the ring. When Rocky went to Russia to fight Drago, they made Russia look like it was this cold, bitter, isolated place. And you see this often on. If you watch Stranger Things, they have that same type of narrative about Russia. And there's more to a country than that. So every country has its pros and its cons. But ever since I've been alive, I've never seen it presented in a positive light, especially when you talk about Hollywood, the entertainment industry. So this is when they came after Jill Stein. Now, it gets worse because they also came after, of course, they would try to implicate Julian Assange in some way, shape, or form. Another account deemed is Russian was WikiLeaks. Shown the attribution, Stella Assange said, WikiLeaks does not fit the definition, noting that anyone using surveillance-resistant search tools like the Tor browser might also be deemed Russian. And here's an example here. It says many high-profile is Russian accounts, such as WikiLeaks and Russia Today, tweeted with Podesta emails, receiving a significant number of impressions. And so basically what they were trying to say is that because RT obviously is Russia television, because they were receiving a lot of impressions, and you have RT, which is based in Russia, they were basically trying to say that these were dangerous. Isn't it crazy when you think about it? It's like, these are dangerous. How dare they get a lot of impressions? The algorithm, it's supposed to work against them. It's not supposed to help them. Let's go on here. And this is more about Stella as well. Use of Tor would randomly result in false positives. Stella Assange said, Tor is a tool for civil liberties and privacy communities. Now, I don't know if you guys have seen this before, but here is a screenshot here. There's the symbol. It says browse privately, explore freely. And this isn't the only tool that's like this. There's other ways to do this as well. You can also go on Google and you can choose the incognito option, although I still wonder if that's actually incognito because it is the Google Chrome browser, but you do have that option. It says the goal of onion routing was to have a way to use the internet with as much privacy as possible. And the idea was to route traffic through multiple servers and encrypt it each step of the way. This is still a simple explanation for how Tor works today. Now, why would you want to browse the internet with much privacy as possible? Maybe you are a journalist, you're an investigative journalist, and you're trying to track down information that you don't want exposed yet. Maybe you are not a journalist and you just don't want the government spying on you. After what was revealed from Edward Snowden, this may be why people may seek to go a private route. Is that a bad thing? Should you be condemned for that? Why do they need to see what you're looking at? They don't pay us for our data anyway. Going on here, in the same Osprey document, Twitter notes the hashtag war against Democrats, which NYT reported was posted a scary 1,700 times on election day, only garnered a microscopic 6,953 impressions, a hydrogen atom in Twitter's vast ocean of tweets. So they didn't like that hashtag. Look at this. The fake Americans Russia created to influence, when they talk about influence, and you know what that is. I can't say that here. Fake Americans. This is a trip, man. People fall for anything. On Twitter, as on Facebook, Russian fingerprints are on hundreds or thousands of fake accounts that regularly posted anti-Clinton messages. So here we go. If you were posting bad things about Hillary Clinton, remember they were saying that back then, the whole Russiagate theory that Russia must have been involved. No, you just couldn't just dislike Hillary Clinton because she's a warmonger and because she's a prude. You couldn't just dislike her because of that. It goes on to say many were automated Twitter accounts called, I can't say that on here, I'll be careful saying that, that sometimes fired off identical messages seconds apart and in the exact alphabetic order of their made-up names, according to FireEye researchers. On election day, for instance, they found that one group of Twitter sent out the hashtag war against Democrats more than 1,700 times. So this is called a tweet storm. It doesn't mean that this is necessarily something that someone from Russia is doing. We have done tweet storms for Assange, where if we're having an Assange rally, we'll have a little DM group and everyone will say, all right, guys, we're going to do a tweet storm this day, this time. And everybody tweets it out at the same time. And that's how you get the event to trend. So they didn't really have proof that this was the case, that there were actual Russian agents that were tweeting out those hashtags. That's something to keep in mind. They didn't have the proof, but they were trying to make it true. Another example with hashtag war against Democrats. It says here, the hashtag did not trend anywhere globally, and the tweets received a small number of impressions. So this is another example with the Twitter files where you had these government agencies, they were going after accounts that weren't trending. Some of these accounts were very small and they were going after them. And this hashtag actually did not make an impression, a big impression as they thought it would have, but they went after them anyway. This was a waste of time. I feel you, boy, for love. I feel you. Okay. A waste of time. Let's go on here. So Matt goes on to say, after Twitter's early attempts to identify Russian accounts resulted in such low numbers, they used different methodologies. They were determined to try to find something, tallying ever increasing numbers of Russians from 22 to 201 to 2,700 to 2,752 to 3,124 in Osprey, and finally 3,814. So it says over 2,700 Russia-linked accounts that sent 1.4 million tweets about U.S. elections suspended by Twitter. Twitter's list of 2,752. See how the number continues to increase? And they call them Russian trolls. And then you can see here, it says activity by a priori Russian account. It says the accounts 2,121. It says accounts that have any Russian signal 1,003. How many of the total 2,051 accounts is Russian? The point that they're trying to make here, and I think that Matt's trying to make, is that this is a relatively small number. There's millions of users on Twitter. This was them trying to make something out of nothing. So when they didn't have enough information, as much as they thought that they were going to find, they tried to make something. This is what they'll do sometimes. I've said this before. They'll try to find something to make their statement to be true. Now, it goes on to say, we have now sent notices to Twitter users with an active email address with our records indicate are based in the US and fall into at least one of the following categories. People who directly engaged during the election period with the 3,841 IRA linked accounts were identified, either by retweeting, quoting, replying to, mentioning, or liking those accounts or content created by those accounts. So because you retweeted a tweet from one of those accounts, that means you're this asset? That means you're an agent? Do you see how far they are reaching? This is a big reach. People who were actively following one of the identified IRA linked accounts at the time those accounts were suspended. Oh, my dear God, how dare you follow one of the accounts? This is just crazy. Just because you follow that account doesn't mean you have any connection with the rest of this that's going on. So that's how far they were willing to go. Let's go here. Boop. Even as Twitter began referring openly to IRA-linked accounts, the company had no sure way to make such identifications. They were only potentially connected. See, we have expanded the number of people notified about interactions with Twitter accounts potentially connected to a propaganda effort by a Russian government-linked organization known as the Internet Research Agency. Our notice efforts are focused on certain types of interactions, and they will not encompass every person that ever saw this content. Our goal is providing these notifications is to advance public awareness of and engagement with the important issues raised in our blog posts and provide greater transparency to our account holders and the public. They were reaching. And what's really interesting to me is the fact that for all the people who constantly reported about Russiagate, like the Rachel Maddows, Russia tried to interfere. You never hear them mention how the US government tried to interfere in other countries' elections. And the US government does this how many times? What is that? What about the regime changes that the US government has implemented in other countries? So to sit back here and just pretend like the US government doesn't actually do this, it's embarrassing in the state of media. That is high-level propaganda. High-level propaganda. They had actually no proof. Russiagate was proven to be false, but they spoke about it as if they did have proof. But you have proof of the US government intervening in other countries' elections, but you wouldn't hear them talk about that. It goes on to say, as policy chief Colin Crowell explained in late 2017, we are citing accounts as IRA on the basis of third-party assessments, as we have no realistic way of knowing this on a Twitter-centric basis apart from educated guesses. And here's another screenshot of one of those emails. And the subject here says BuzzFeed list urgent. So even at one point, they were looking at a BuzzFeed list. And I'm going to tell you guys this as well. Be careful about joining those lists on Twitter. Okay? Just be careful about that. If someone adds you to a list, you can remove yourself from that list by unfollowing that person. Twitter knew that if they couldn't identify IRA accounts with a certainty, outside researchers lacking Twitter's internal data couldn't either. Part 2. Russian troll hunters. They just don't have the chops. Here's a screenshot of an email again from the famous Yoel Roth, who has come up here multiple times. I really like the idea of doing this. If nothing else, it streamlines some of the relationships that presently are just managed by ad hoc by different individuals and creates a single touch point between those people's groups and Twitter. Nick, your list covers a lot of folks I talk to on a regular basis. Only addition I might suggest would be Data and Society, maybe Donna, but possibly others in DNS as appropriate. They're doing lots of work around the census in addition to broader 2020 stuff. I'd recommend against including the folks from Clemson. They're too chummy with HPSCI and have thrown us under the bus with overblown conclusions a few too many times. Look at this part that's highlighted. I get the keep your enemies close thing, but they just don't have the chops to back it up. And then this response is from Kevin Kane. Completely understand your point on Clemson, and I'm happy to continue to deal with that on a one-off basis. While USC is doing great work, but perhaps for the purpose of this call, perhaps we hold off for now and stick with the think tank non-university crowd. So you see this? They were even hitting up the universities. Let's go on. It says, if you look on Racket News today, you'll see that MSNBC alone made hundreds of false claims of Russia meddling, citing the Hamilton 68 dashboard, which past Twitter files reveals to be tracking Americans, not Russian and trolls as claimed. Let's take a look at some of this. We're not going to play the entire video because it's like 11 minutes long, but we'll play some of it.
McCarthy publicly charges that the United States is infested with
foreign forces at work in our politics.
And he says that he has a list of
600 Twitter accounts that appear to be linked to the Russian government.
That's a lie.
These Kremlin-linked accounts, these Kremlin-linked accounts, these Kremlin-linked accounts, Russian-linked accounts, Kremlin-linked accounts, a foreign influence, Kremlin-oriented Twitter accounts, Kremlin-linked Twitter accounts, Russian-linked Twitter accounts, impersonating Americans.
They are every day playing on social media. There's a website called Hamilton 68 that measures it.
This Russian influence tracker on Twitter.
The Russian dashboard is a real-time dashboard of Russian influence.
The Russian networks that we monitor.
Accounts allegedly linked to bots and trolls that are linked to Russia.
Russia linked accounts and bots according to a Russian tracker.
To track what Russian bots are doing.
Kremlin-linked accounts, Kremlin efforts, Kremlin attacks.
The dashboard, Hamilton 68, determined that Russia was in the Alabama election. We know that the Russians were focused on this. These forensic sites show what the Russians are doing to us.
Interference from Russians.
You get the idea. You get the idea. They all ran with that narrative. Again, there was no proof. That's one of the things the Twitter files revealed. They didn't actually have proof of this. This piece here, outside of Hamilton 68, about which Twitter stayed quiet despite internal knowledge that it was BS, Twitter analysts may have had the most disdain for Clemson's media forensics hub, a major driver of print and TV cyber scare stories of Russian subversion. And then there's a screenshot here from Yoel Roth saying just what he had said there. And then there's a screenshot here where you can see all these different stories about troll hunters, how to spot Russian trolls, etc. Clemson's troll hunter, Professor Darren Linville and Patrick Warren, appeared in one media story after another, sometimes photographed with Hamilton 68 dashboards in the background, giving their self away, even warning that uplifting tweets could lead you into the dark clutches of a Russian troll. These are professors at Clemson University. Like, they even had academia involved. And you can see the screenshots here. Look at them. Look at them. See, there's the screenshot, the background there of Hamilton 68. So they were standing right in front of it. There's no way to deny this. No way. I have a bone to pick with Clemson anyway, because I went to University of South Carolina. That's where I graduated from for undergrad, and we were rivals. So there's bad sports blood there. Anywho, When asked how they knew an account was Russian, Warren confessed he can't be 100% sure. But LaVille said he was certain. He wouldn't say how, though. Transparency just isn't possible, he said. So if you're not certain, how can you say you're 100% sure? I always say be careful about using 100% and absolutely and those kind of phrases if you're not sure. There's screenshots here. Now, this was from Rolling Stone. That uplifting tweet you just shared, Russian trolls sent it. See, look, even Rolling Stone wasn't. These are the guys right here. These are the professors, Darren Linville, Patrick Warren. They wrote this and Rolling Stone published it. And another screenshot here of a tweet thread with Darren Linville where they go on to discuss this as well. Right here, Patrick Warren says, I can't be 100% sure she's Russian, but I believe that she is. Again, they acknowledge that they really were not sure. Clemson's most certain troll hunter seemed to jump the gun in 2020 when he suggested Bloomberg is racist could be a Russian hashtag. This is too much. Could be a Russian hashtag because it started that morning from the account Dark Warlord that lives somewhere in Asia because it posts when Americans should be sleeping. Anyone ever heard of, I don't know, this thing called a time zone where obviously when we're asleep in the United States, people in Asia may be just starting their morning or vice versa? Like, this is crazy. The fact they believe this. Bloomberg is racist. Why would they assume that is a Russian hashtag? Stop and frisk Bloomberg. Let's go on. Here's a screenshot here from Darren. I've seen more than one person asking if hashtag Bloomberg is racist is a Russian hashtag. First use of the hashtag connected to the video came very early this morning at Dark Warlord. If the person operating the account sleeps at night, like most people, they live somewhere in Asia. So what? Oh my God. This is insane. This is a professor. This is a professor. And I'll show one more piece here. You guys get the idea. But the Bloomberg piece I want to show as well, that was false. It started prior to that morning and not by Dark Warlord, who is an American living in the US, not Asia. When I asked why his sleep seemed off, he laughed and told me, I'm a nurse at a hospital in Indiana. In 2020, I worked the night shift. This also represents a class divide, how these professors just assume that everyone has a 9-to-5, how they totally discount the people who have to work third and second shift in this country. What about doctors that work third shift? The people who work in the ER? Do you see the disconnect? It shows up every time, the class divide. And so there's a screenshot here that says hashtag Bloomberg is despicable and should never be allowed to walk away from these words. Hashtag Bloomberg is racist. And they show something there. And that's that speech. I don't think I can play it. It's a screenshot, but that's that speech from Bloomberg. I mean, come on. This guy started stop and frisk in New York. This is absolutely disqualifying. Bloomberg needs to drop out now. New video, Mike Bloomberg is a racist. I remember this. It says here, and the way you get the guns out of the kid's hand is throw them up against the walls and frisk them. This was true. He made that statement. So they were willing to go as far and to say that people using that hashtag were actually Russian assets or Russian agents. Instead of, and you know why you do this? Now they have you focused on that instead of focusing on what Mike Bloomberg said. That's how that works. But you get the gist. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's pretty long. But at the end, let me get to the end here because I want to show you what he says. He also talks about the Clemson professor's comments to Racket News. And you can look at that as well. Long story short here, they had no proof, no evidence. And they implicated people like Jill Stein. And that was mainly because she was running third party and they didn't want anyone running against Hillary Clinton. That's what that was really about. You took votes away from Hillary Clinton. No. I'm going to go to some of these comments and we'll get to the next story. I'll take the comment on Rockfin first, Eric. Boy, I tell you. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. U.S. has sanctioned the wrong country. After seeing the bully on the block walk around punching everyone in the face, Russia said, "Oh, I got special surprise for you." They put Luke Cage out there with his jaw out and waited. Once bully came through, it broke its hand. Now I'm confident we're going to get reparations now that it won't be worth anything. We always get what's left over after they have no use for it anymore. Well said. Let me go to some of these comments here. Thank you for the super chat, Lyle. I've been trying to leave, but thanks to this system, I'm too poor to leave. Yeah, I've heard that comment from other people as well, people that want to leave. Thank you for this as well. It's so funny to see the U.S. doing all the things it accuses other countries of doing. Bingo. Thank you for this super chat, JRCII. Tor and Incognito have nothing to do with each other. Tor protects snooping from government and internet provider. Incognito does not. Good to know. Thank you so much for that. And thank you for the super chat, Dwayne. Hillary introduced the guilt by association tactic to smear her political opponents in 2016, and Dems still do it. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. We are going on to our next story here, and this is about Tucker Carlson. So Tucker Carlson has broke his silence since he has been fired from Fox News. I looked for information about Don Lemon to see if he made a statement as well. Other than what I presented to you the other night, I have not found any new information from him. So that's why we're not talking about him tonight. But Tucker Carlson has some things to say. Now, I want to start with this article here from the New York Times. It says, on eve of trial, discovery of Carlson's texts set off crisis atop Fox. Private messages sent by Tucker Carlson that had been redacted in legal filings showed him making highly offensive remarks that went beyond the comments of his primetime show. So for those of you wondering if the comments that were made were true, let's see what they say here. And then keep in mind, it is the New York Times, so you got to take it with a grain of salt. Let's jump into this part. Private messages sent by Mr. Carlson that had been redacted in legal filings showed him making highly offensive and crude comments that went beyond inflammatory, often racist comments of his primetime show and anything disclosed in the lead up to the trial. Despite the fact that Fox's trial lawyers had these messages for months, the board and some senior executives were now learning about their details for the first time, setting off a crisis at the highest level of the company, according to two people with knowledge of the discussion. So now they're trying to say the reason why he was removed was because of these text messages. Let's continue. The discovery added pressure on the Fox leadership as it sought to find a way to avoid a trial where Mr. Carlson, not to mention so many others at the network, would be questioned about the contents of the private messages they exchanged in the aftermath of the 2020 election. 2 days after the board's discovery, Fox settled that case for $787.5 million, believed to be the highest for a defamation trial. Several people with knowledge of Fox's discussions said the redacted messages were a catalyst for one of the most momentous decisions Fox and its leaders, the father-son team of Rupert and Lachlan Murdoch, had made in years to sever ties with the host of the highest rated and highly profitable prime time program and a face of the network in the Trump era. The company dismissed him on Monday with a phone call from Suzanne Scott, the chief executive of Fox News Media. So for those of you wondering how he was removed, via phone. Let's go on. All right, let's go here. In the end, according to one of the people with knowledge of internal discussions, Lachlan Murdoch viewed forcing out Mr. Carlson as a business decision, just as he did the Dominion settlement. Fox had no comment beyond its initial statement announcing Fox News Media and Tucker Carlson have agreed to part ways. Mr. Carlson and Brian Friedman, a lawyer representing him, did not respond to requests for comment. On Wednesday night, Mr. Carlson posted a video on Twitter speaking publicly for the first time. I'm going to show you that video. We'll get into that. So I'm going to skip this because I want you to hear the actual video. It is unclear why Fox board and other executives did not know about the contents of the redacted messages until just before the trial, which was focused on whether Fox News had knowingly aired false claims about Dominion and its voting machines. Unredacted portions of the documents, including some in which Mr. Carlson spoke derisively about former President Donald J. Trump, were widely reported on in the weeks before the trial. The board considered using an outside law firm to investigate the top-rated hosts, concerned about the harm Mr. Carlson's behavior might cause even beyond the Dominion case. By the time the board did see the redacted material, Lachlan Murdoch was already moving to find an out-of-court accommodation with Dominion, having given his negotiators the go-ahead to increase Fox's offer to the company, according to one of the people briefed on the discussions. And there's Rupert Murdoch there. Remember, I told you Rupert Murdoch is a media mogul. He's a billionaire. I don't feel sorry for Rupe. Moving on. Company executives have indicated that a variety of factors fed into the decision to fire Mr. Carlson. Listen to this. After Fox stood by him for years as he drew protests and advertiser boycotts for trafficking in conspiracy theories and narratives of white grievance, but they acknowledged that the discovery of what was in the redacted text messages was an important factor in his ultimate dismissal. So for those who were asking me, does this have something to do with the fact that advertisers pulled out because of some of the rhetoric that Tucker Carlson was using? Apparently, according to this article, that didn't have anything to do with it. And it's more about these text messages. The role that the messages produced in the Dominion discovery process played in helping to end Mr. Carlson's career at Fox demonstrates the severity of the damage the suit inflicted on the company. Fox was battered repeatedly by damaging disclosures as it proceeded to trial. If it had settled far earlier in the process, the company could have avoided having to hand over Mr. Carlson's messages and those others, including from the personal accounts of both Murdochs. Interesting. That piece right there is interesting. So, and for those of you wondering, they didn't really say what it was. It says here, one person briefed on the contents of the redacted material and said one of the messages was particularly offensive, adding to the concern at the top of the company. The Times has not seen the contents of the messages. So just to let you know, I wanted to give you a little bit of backstory there. They have not revealed what those messages have said. And I'm kind of like, I'm kind of like the show me person. Like, I want to see what it said. So before you go and back that, it's probably best to wait to see if they're actually going to reveal those text messages and see what those messages actually said. I was looking at this write-up from the New York Times and I'm like, okay. They say there's messages, but they don't tell you exactly what the messages said. And I'm not even saying that they necessarily have to show a screenshot, but they don't even tell you what was said. They just say it was offensive. So I would say, yes, JS, I want to see the text. Exactly. Like me, for one, like, offensive how? What did it say? So that's my take on that. Nikki said the messages are redacted. They won't be released. So there you go. So are we just supposed to believe what the New York Times is saying? And there's no proof here, no evidence, whether you like Tucker Carlson or not. And I'm not a fan of Tucker Carlson. We still need evidence. Now, he did come forward. He finally spoke out, and I want you to hear what he had to say, and we'll chime in.
Good evening, it's Tucker Carlson. One of the first things you realize when you step outside the noise for a few days is how many genuinely nice people there are in this country. Kind and decent people, people who really care about what's true, and a bunch of hilarious people also, a lot of those. It's got to be the majority of the population, even now. So that's heartening. The other thing you notice when you take a little time off is how unbelievably stupid most of the debates you see on television are. They're completely irrelevant. They mean nothing. In 5 years, we won't even remember that we had them. Trust me, as someone who's participated. And yet at the same time, and this is the amazing thing, the undeniably big topics, the ones that will define our future, get virtually no discussion at all. War, civil liberties, emerging science, demographic change, corporate power, natural resources. When was the last time you heard a legitimate debate about any of those issues? It's been a long time. Debates like that are not permitted in American media. Both political parties and their donors have reached consensus on what benefits them, and they actively collude to shut down any conversation about it.
We're going to pause here for just a second, and I'm going to go back because I have something to say about this.
Get virtually no discussion at all. War, civil liberties, emerging debates you see on television are. They're completely irrelevant. They mean nothing. In 5 years, we won't even remember that we had them. Trust me, as someone who's participated. And yet at the same time, and this is the amazing thing, the undeniably big topics, the ones that will define our future, get virtually no discussion at all. War, civil liberties, emerging science, demographic change, corporate power, natural resources.
Is that true? I don't agree with Tucker Carlson on probably 99.8% of things. But what he just said right there, is that true? Is it true that we are not having these discussions on mainstream media about the real important issues, about war? Are we having that discussion? And if that discussion is being had, what is the narrative around it? Because it seems to me, as long as you are pro-war, you're welcome on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News all day. But for the people who are anti-war, those voices don't have a home when it comes to mainstream media. The one person who was giving them a voice was Tucker Carlson. Isn't that something? Do you think Fox is going to continue to let that happen now that he's gone? You wouldn't see those people on MSNBC. You would not see Jimmy Dore on MSNBC or CNN talking about ending the wars. You wouldn't see him on there. You wouldn't see Aaron Mate on there. You wouldn't see Max Blumenthal on there. There's a reason for that. They don't want that message to go out. Their donors wouldn't like that. You see, unlike Fox News, where they were okay with the advertisers being pissed off and pulling out, CNN and MSNBC are not okay with that. They are not okay with that. So think about that. For just a second, put aside how you feel about Tucker Carlson. You don't like him as a person, because what did I tell you a couple days ago? Just because you dislike someone doesn't mean that what they're saying right now isn't true. Let's go on. There's more.
When was the last time you heard a legitimate debate about any of those issues? It's been a long time. Debates like that are not permitted in American media. Both political parties and their donors have reached consensus on what benefits them.
both political parties and their donors. This is what we have been talking about multiple times. This video got 18.4 million views. This video got more views than Tucker Carlson's show that was on Fox News. What does that tell you? That tells you that by Fox firing Tucker Carlson, they have actually given him a bigger platform. His voice is bigger now than it was when he was on Fox News. He doesn't really need to be on there. He could start a YouTube channel tomorrow, and it would blow up. He could go on Rumble. It would blow up. He don't really need to be on Fox News. They needed him. Both parties are beholden to their donors. BlackRock, Vanguard, State Street Corporation, shareholders of CNN, shareholders of Time Warner. That's why the media is controlled. The corporations, they control the media, and they control the politicians, and they control the government. That's who's really running the country, people. Joe Biden ain't running this country. Joe Biden don't even know where he's at right now. Think about it. Joe Biden's not making, you guys really think Joe Biden's making decisions? It's all about the donors. We'll get into that more too when we get to the Kim segment.
They actively collude to shut down any conversation about it. Suddenly, the United States looks very much like a one-party state. That's a depressing realization, but it's not permanent. Our current orthodoxies won't last. They're brain dead. Nobody actually believes them. Hardly anyone's life is improved by them. This moment is too inherently ridiculous to continue.
Notice how he's calling out both parties now that he's not on Fox News. And this is another thing. You can't do that on mainstream media. I worked in media. I know. You can't do that. You can't do that on CNN. You can't do that on MSNBC. You can't do that on Fox News. Everybody knows Fox News is supposed to be the conservative network. And CNN and MSNBC, they're supposed to be more the liberal, leaning outlets. So you can criticize the opposing party, but you can't criticize your own party to the point where your donors will be upset or your advertisers will be upset. But see, now that he's not a part of them anymore, now he can tell you that both parties have this problem. And he called it the Uni-Party, which is what we've been telling you. It's one corporate party.
So it won't. The people in charge know this. That's why they're hysterical and aggressive. They're afraid. They've given up persuasion. They're resorting to force. But it won't work. When honest people say what's true, calmly and without embarrassment, they become powerful. At the same time, the liars who've been trying to silence them shrink. And
this part right here, because we just talked about the Twitter files, right? Listen to this part right here.
But it won't work. When honest people say what's true, calmly and without embarrassment, they become powerful. At the same time, the liars who've been trying to silence them shrink.
The liars who have been trying to silence them shrink. Think about the Twitter files. It's only a matter of time, people. It's only a matter of time for all of this is blown. And thankfully, more Americans are waking up to that.
They become weaker. That's the iron law of the universe. True things prevail. Where can you still find Americans saying true things? There aren't many places left, but there are some, and that's enough. As long as you...
Independent media. Independent media. That's where you can find it. I'm sorry, but it's just the reality of the situation. Let's go back a little bit. But in mainstream media, no, he's right. You can. He's letting you know that even with him, and we knew this, but he's letting you know this is all a facade. When you watch mainstream media, this is all a game. It's a narrative that they put out. It doesn't mean the commentator who's saying those things actually believes those things. Those people are reading a script. But that's what they want the masses to see. That's what they want people to believe. So he's letting you know, even though he was a part of it, mainstream media, that for the most part, what you're seeing isn't even true.
Things prevail. Where can you still find Americans saying true things? There aren't many places left, but there are some, and that's enough. As long as you can hear the words, there is hope. See you soon.
You catch that last part? See you soon. So that means he's not done yet. I don't know where he's going to go. I told you some options that I think that he could have. But that's him letting you know he's not done. Now, Fox News has had some problems since he's left. This is from Mario. Breaking news, Fox News Tonight loses over 700,000 viewers after Tucker Carlson. According to data from TV news site TV Newser, an estimated 2.6 million viewers turned into replacement program Fox News Tonight, which was hosted by Brian Kilmeade. Oh God, that guy's horrible. I'm sorry. I just realized who that was. That guy is horrible. He's on Fox and Friends. Anywho, hosted by Brian Kilmeade as the first of several rotating hosts. That tally easily beat out the competing programs on CNN and MSNBC in the same time slot, but is a ratings drop of more than 20% from Tucker Carlson Tonight. Carlson averaged 3.3 million viewers over the past 2 months. The 700K drop represents a decline of 21.3%. Yeah, Brian Kilmeade. God, I'm not surprised. Some people have also said that they have removed their Fox subscriptions. This was new to me too, because I didn't realize that some people actually had a subscription with Fox. I didn't realize that was a thing. I don't watch this stuff. Like for the most part, I go to clips that I'll usually find on Twitter or YouTube, but I don't sit down and watch Fox News. I don't sit down and watch CNN, MSNBC. I might have it on if I'm at the gym, because I try to like do my research and work out at the same time, get my run on. But other than that, no, I had no idea that was even a thing. So I was surprised by that people were paying for subscriptions for Fox. Now, Chris Cuomo, Mr. I also got fired. He wanted to weigh in on this as well. I want you to hear what he had to say. Now, Chris Cuomo is with News Nation, for those of you who are not aware.
I have very good news for you. We have news on our watch that involves our greater media culture that's going on. Tucker Carlson has released a video, and I've decided to play you a piece of it, not because I'm looking to magnify him, but because I believe that it is an example of exactly what is most true about Tucker Carlson and his offerings to you. And we have no one better to discuss what it means for Fox and for the rest of us than Bill O'Reilly, who's still with us. And then we'll take your calls. Here's a sample of a 2+ minute message he just put out.
He had to let people know that he's not trying to amplify him, because that's exactly what people will say.
When honest people say what's true, calmly and without embarrassment, they become powerful. At the same time, the liars who've been trying to silence them shrink, and they become weaker. That's the iron law of the universe. True things prevail. Where can you still find Americans saying true things? There aren't many places left, but there are some, and that's enough. As long as you can hear the words, there is hope. See you soon.
So very important that he says, see you soon, which means he doesn't want to be on the sidelines, which anybody who's a practitioner of the law within the media understands means he's got a negotiation on his hands, because exactly what Fox will want is for him to be sidelined. That's what they pay for with their contractual rights. But as would have it, Bill, I don't know if you listened to the whole message. I did, and of course, that's not the part I would have played. The part that I would have played is Tucker Carlson showing an absolute understanding of how what matters in this country doesn't get discussed because it gets drowned out by other agendas. And the reason I believe that's really important for people to understand is that I have always suggested and believe Tucker Carlson knows what's right and what's wrong. and has decided to play to advantage by courting a fringe with hateful tropes and demagoguery. He knows that it's pernicious. He knows that it's disingenuous, but it's effective. And he knows it, which I think is the only avenue of legit criticism and not all this other stuff we're hearing about him. But that key part at the end, I'll see you soon, Bill. What does it mean to you?
So this is Bill Riley on the right here. For those of you who are not familiar, man, he looks different now. I haven't seen this dude in a while, but he was also removed from Fox News as well. He had sexual harassment allegations, if I remember correctly. So he was another one that bit the dust. Now, Hardlin's Kid is here, says, what is Cuomo and O'Reilly doing on TV? So this is News Nation. This is YouTube. I don't know if they're on Roku or not, but it's a channel on YouTube. This is where Chris Cuomo went like after he was fired. So that's what's happening there. Yeah, really interesting.
He's going to do some social media thing like I do, I believe, and he'll make a lot of money doing it. If I were him, I wouldn't address the situation until I had my lawyers at my side, and, you know, because there's more shoes to drop here. With
Interestingly, he did exactly what he attacks other people for. He mentioned nothing in this statement about any allegations that are relevant to his move, other than to say there are a lot of stupid debates on TV, and I know that because I was a participant. He's right about that.
Yeah, there's that part too. I mean, it was just ridiculous. Now, I guess because of the contract that he's under, he probably can't do anything right now. I don't know when his contract ends or whatever, but it sounds like he can't make a move just yet, or I don't know. I don't know. He probably signed an NDA at some point too, because that's not uncommon in media. So maybe he can't talk too much about what happened. But Lyle, you're cracking me up here, bud. Thank you for the super chat. I had no idea Chris Cuomo was still alive. I don't know what to say.
Well, he was smart to do that. When I left Fox, we issued a statement, my team. That statement stands to this day. And then I said, I'm not going to talk about it because it doesn't get you anywhere. The haters will hate you no matter what you say. The people who like you will like you. You're not changing anybody's minds. Joe Biden won't be able to understand it anyway. What was interesting is that there's a leak to the New York Times tonight. I don't know whether Dusty has seen this. Just came out. I have it right here. And it says that the reason that Carlson was fired, this is reason number 5,428, was because he said bad things, crude things on his machine.
That was the New York Times article that I was just reading to you. That's the article he's referring to. And I'm not sure why he calls a cell phone a machine, but okay.
And they got them in the discovery process of Dominion, and that's why they canned him. That's basically sending a message to Carlson. See, this piece was leaked by one of the board of directors at Fox to New York Times. The New York Times says, with knowledge of internal discussions. One of the people with knowledge of the internal discussions.
Wall Street Journal, which is owned by the same company, had the same kind of story. They're leaking on him, and they're trying to keep him quiet.
And I know who leaked it to them because the wording is perfect. Anyway, Carlson would be smart not to address any of this and let his legal people do it.
Do you guys think that's right? Do you think it's best that he not discuss it at all? And the reason why I'm asking you that question is because I've seen situations like this happen before where the individual was told by their attorney not to discuss it, and it actually somewhat ruined their career. Do you guys think that? It's me. Christina says, I don't think Tucker should discuss any of it. He should get his own social media account and keep doing what he was doing on his own. He has a following. Okay. So Christina doesn't know. You guys are saying no. Okay. It looks like most of you are saying no. You don't think he should. Okay. That's what it looks like. Interesting. Eric says, nah, put it all out there. I'm going to tell you about a situation. Let me let this finish, and I'm going to tell you why I asked that question.
But he has a huge opportunity to do what I've done. The Wall Street Journal actually wrote about my success today, which shocked me. And it is go out on your own, run your own operation, bring it directly to the folks, which we do through BillO'Reilly.com, Team Normal, you have the gear, okay? And talk to the people without the corporation. And in this day and age, you can be very, very successful doing it. And that's what I believe Tucker Carlson will do.
Hey, thank you for.
No, thank you. Bye. Okay, so let me tell you why I asked you that question. I think most of you are familiar with Chris Brown. He was an R&B singer. At one point in time, he used to date Rihanna. Young people in the chat will know this. There was an altercation between them. He punched her. You guys remember this? Like everyone was like, he hit Rihanna, he beat Rihanna and stuff like that. So years later, Chris Brown came forward to finally tell like his side of the story. And Chris Brown said in his version of the events that she was actually hitting him first and accusing him of cheating with someone he wasn't cheating with. Anyway, I still don't think a guy should not hit a woman. But the question that came through was, Chris, why didn't you say this at that time? Why didn't you, at least to your fans, why didn't you tell people your side? Why were you quiet? Why were you silent? And Chris Brown said his attorney told him not to say anything. And that's why he didn't say anything. But in him not saying anything, his career kind of went down the toilet. Now, I think he still, records now, but I don't think Chris Brown will ever be as popular as he was before all that happened. It's really crazy. What's this, Hector? Hector got the scoop. Hector said, yeah, Rihanna punched him too, 100% true. Yeah, if you watch, like if you could probably find it on YouTube. I actually saw the whole interview, but look for the interview where he tells like his side of the story as well. Because I just think that is important for people to know. I still do not condemn a man like hitting a woman, but I still say like you still need to hear both sides of the story. And we didn't get to hear both sides of the story because he listened to what his attorney told him to do. So I don't know. Was that the right decision at that time? I don't know. What's up, Red 6? He said Red said Rihanna admitted that. That's good. That's good. Yeah. Rihanna started the fight. She's not as sane as people may think. Yeah, it's just, I don't know. We'll go to some of the comments and then we're going to go to this story here with RFK and Kim Iversen. Thank you for the super chat, Lyle and Bill O'Reilly ? Yeah, I don't know what was happening there. Thank you for this one as well. Watching these two talk to each other is excruciating. Yeah, that was weird. It's a weird moment for me. And thank you for the super chat, Hysteric Raider. Did you see Crystal's video on Bernie? Glorious. No, I did not. Janice says the New York Times should have shown a screenshot. They have a terrible record of printing evidence-free reports and never retracting stories after they get debunked. That's what I was saying. I said, look, I haven't seen these text messages. So until you see them, just keep that in mind. Lorshak, his Trump interview and Uhuru were too much for the deep state. Scarlett said, I bet Tucker still has a plan. He would be out eventually for telling the truth he wasn't supposed to. Interesting. Speaking of telling the truth, let's get into this story here with Kim Iversen and RFK Jr. Now, Kim will be here tomorrow, so I can talk to her, about this more when she's here. But Kim did interview RFK Jr. She's interviewed him before, but this is, I think, is the first time she's interviewed him since he's announced his candidacy for president. Now, before we get into what she asked him, because there's one part of this interview I really want to hone in on. I want to show you his announcement video first because it's related to the question. So let's dive in.
What we need in the United States is not division. What we need in the United States is not hatred. What we need in the United States is not violence and lawlessness, but is love and wisdom and compassion toward one another.
Every nation has a darker side, and the easiest thing for a politician to do is to appeal to our hatred and our anger and our bigotry and greed and xenophobia and all of the alchemies of demagoguery. My father and my uncle had a vision for America, a vision of racial harmony, of prosperity for all Americans, of peace in the world, and of honest government. Their lives were tragically cut short, and America took a different path. Yet the possibility they foresaw is still alive. The American
Sebastian said better video than Joe Biden. The Biden announcement video looks like a Budweiser commercial.
America that almost was, and yet may be. I've been fighting corporate corruption my entire life, but I understand that today the problem is much larger than a few crooked individuals. The problem is a system that no longer serves the people, and a people who are so divided and so fearful that they are easily ruled. It's time to unlearn the reflexes of fear and blame and find ways to unify ourselves and turn our country around. I won't pretend to you that it will be easy, but I know what it will take. My father said it: love, wisdom, and compassion toward one another. And that's where we need to start. We will scale down the war machine and bring our resources home. We will rebuild our water systems, repair our roads, modernize our railroads, and clean up our environment. We will also clean up government and earn back the people's trust.
Hold on to that part right there. Clean up government and win back the people's trust. Hold on to that part.
We will end the secrecy, the censorship, and the surveillance. We will
secrecy, censorship, and surveillance.
Will again be a fearless land of liberty.
The cost of freedom is always high, but Americans have always paid it.
We will face honestly the darker parts of our history, the genocide, the racism, not to shame or blame or punish, but to repair as best we can in a spirit of compassion and kindness toward all. I'm inviting all of you to join me to create an America that we can believe in and be proud of again. I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and I'm running for President of the United States.
Okay. I wanted you to see that announcement because this question that Kim is asking him here, oh, God, we've been here before. We have been here. And I want you to hear this. Now, Oz, shout out to Oz because he shared this. Oz said advice can save a nation if it doesn't fall on deaf ears. Let's hear what Kim asked him. Kim asked RFK Jr. the $1 million question yesterday, and this is what everyone wants to hear, I think, for the most part. Listen to this.
In the end, and this is what happened in 2020, in the end, when they say, well, Joe Biden's the candidate and that's it, are you going to endorse him for president when you decide, if you decide you're not going to run?
I'm in it to win it, so I'm not thinking of a plan B.
Okay.
Isn't that the same thing that Marianne said? Isn't that the same thing? Didn't Marianne say the same thing? Like she's doing it so she can win, and we get that. But this question is very crucial. And in his announcement video, when he says that we need to clean up our government, you're not going to clean up the government if you continue to allow the status quo to exist. And that means that if you continue to do what Bernie Sanders did and tell people, well, We can't get Trump, or we can't get whoever else is running out there. We can't get them. So you got to support Joe Biden. Nah, that's not going to clean up anything. Because Joe Biden is straight corporate. So is Trump. So is DeSantis. So is Nikki Haley. None of them people are grassroots. So listen, because Kim, she's gonna push here.
I'm in it to win it, so I'm not thinking of a plan B.
Okay. My only advice is don't do that. If it comes down to that, and the Democratic Party is just saying we're not going to put you on the ticket, and that's that. Don't endorse Joe Biden. Pivot. Go independent. But the last thing you should do is say, yeah, this is okay, fine. Concede. Don't do it. That's just the one thing that I would say. But I definitely.
How come you have no faith in my candidacy?
I don't have any faith in the Democratic Party. I have a lot of faith in your campaign. I have no faith at all. Zero, zilch, none in the Democratic Party. I don't think that they're going to allow you to become the candidate. I think that they've already shown that. And they're going to put Joe Biden on the ticket, and none of us are going to have a choice about it. I think the only thing you could do is your campaign could continue to grow in momentum, of course, which you are. That would be challenging to the Democratic Party, but they will ensure that the establishment media suppresses that information so that they don't see that you're actually growing, because they know that that would have an avalanche effect, that when people start to see that you're actually growing in the polls and that more people are interested in your message, then others are wanting to check that out. They're going to suppress that. I just have no faith at all in them. So I think it's inevitable that Joe Biden's going to end up being the candidate, and you're going to have to pivot. And that might not be such a bad thing. I think
we're going to pause here for just a second because there's something I want to add. Notice she said you're going to have to pivot. And one of the things he said in his announcement video, he talked about his father, he talked about his uncle. I think that he is thinking of how the Democratic Party used to be, right? When it was for the working class. The Democratic Party now is owned by corporations and super PACs and other PACs and super delegates. And I honestly wonder, before Kim asked that question, I wonder if he actually thought about that. Because that is the $1 million question. That is where Bernie has failed multiple times. That's the same question that people were asking Marianne as well. In the end, are you going to tell people to support Joe Biden? And we cannot go into any presidential election primary going forward after what we saw in 2016 and not question the ability and the stronghold of the super delegates, how they are able to give delegates to one particular candidate, even if one candidate won every county in the state. We saw that happen with Bernie Sanders with West Virginia. He won every county in West Virginia, and the super delegates still gave it to Hillary Clinton. The DNC fraud lawsuit, what did they argue in court? That they are actually allowed to do that they're allowed to pick the person if they want to. So we cannot avoid this question. Let's go on.
End up being the candidate, and you're going to have to pivot. And that might not be such a bad thing. I think ultimately you could win this. I don't know if on the Democratic ticket, I get it. Dennis Kucinich is the same way. He doesn't want to give up the Democratic Party, but I think the Democratic Party gave you up. And
that's right. You better preach. You better say it. The Democratic Party gave up all of us long time ago. They gave up the workers. They gave up the middle class. How you lose the middle class? They gave up all of us. And they decided to be the party that supports Wall Street, Goldman Sachs, bankers, elite, Ivy League graduates. That's what the Democratic Party has become. And I think Kim is 100% dead on here. To say, like, for Dennis as well, to say, I don't want to give up the Democratic Party. They don't want you. They don't want you. It's like trying to force an invite to a party that you were not invited to. It's like showing up to someone's wedding and you didn't get an invite. I want to be here. but they don't want you there. So after watching this, and please go watch the full interview. You can see this on Rumble. Watch the full interview there, because I don't know if he thought about this.
The same way. He doesn't want to give up the Democratic Party, but I think the Democratic Party gave you up. And so what are you going to do? They broke up with you. You know, you at some point have to accept it. And this is one of those times, I think that, but hey, the challenge is helpful for press, I think, to continue challenging Joe Biden. I do think that helps from a media perspective, of course. They want to see, oh, this, you know, you're being censored, you're being silenced, you're not being allowed onto a debate stage with him. So I think that is actually good for your campaign for a while, but then there's going to be a period of time when it isn't. And
that's right. That's right. Right now, that doesn't really matter so much. Eventually, we're going to get to a point where people are going to want to see you guys debate or have some type of dialogue with each other. And as long as Joe Biden continues to hide because he doesn't know where he is, let's just be real, this is not likely to happen. Not likely to happen. Now, one of you guys, you mentioned this to me on Call-In the other night, that you wanted me and Kim to host our own debate. I'll ask Kim tomorrow when she comes on. But it'll be funny because it's not like Joe Biden's going to show up. Joe Biden's not going to come on independent media. And so it'll be just kind of weird. It would just be Marianne and RFK Jr., but maybe people will want to see that. I don't know. But all I'm saying is that I sincerely hope, after what Kim said to him, that he is waking up to the reality here. The Democratic Party is not the way it was when JFK was alive. It's not the way it was when RFK was alive. The Democratic Party doesn't even care about the people anymore. Democratic Party cares about money and corporations. Very different time.
And I hope you pivot. That's what I'm hoping. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, well, I'm hoping you're not such a great soothsayer, Kim. And that
I understand. I totally get it. I get your perspective. I'm a realist. That's who I am. So, but yeah.
Look, you make a compelling argument, and I hope that the situation in our country is not as grim as you portray it, but it may be. We'll see.
But it is.
See.
This part right here, you guys. See, I'm telling you, I don't think he realized this. Listen to this.
Look, you make a compelling argument, and I hope that the situation in our country is not as grim as you portray it, but it may be.
It is, though. It is exactly what Kim said. There is no maybe. The situation politically in this country with the electoral process, it is actually that grim. So Kim's a realist. Sometimes people don't like people like us. Like, I'm a realist too. I tell you guys this all the time. Like, I'm a straight shooter. I just give it right at you. Some people don't like that. Some people get upset. Some people, sometimes their feelings get hurt. I'm sorry. My bad. But I am not the type of person that will twist things in a way just so you feel comfortable with this system and think that there's hope the way that it is set up now. I'm not that person. I am a realist. Sometimes that makes some people feel sad. Sometimes that makes some people angry. But I'm going to give it to you straight. So I don't know, man. I don't know.
We'll see.
Well, I wish you the best of luck. I'm a big fan of your campaign and your message. I've gone through a lot of the things that you stand for, and I think that you really do represent the majority of Americans. I really believe that. So I would love to see nothing more than a President Kennedy. That's what I would love to see. So, but, and that's, so that's why I'm just giving you my truthful opinion on that. But Best of luck to you on the campaign trail. Definitely will be watching, and I'll definitely be following everything, and hope to talk to you again in the near future about it, about how things are going, which I hope they'll go well.
I always love talking to you.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Best of luck today and tomorrow on Good Morning America.
So I think, Kim's realism might have just broke his heart a little bit there, because did he seem a little like, I don't know, to you guys, right? He seemed a little shaky there, like when she, gave him the realness. But it needs to be said. It needs to be said. Now, there's a little bit more. Something else I want to show you too. Shout out to Neoliberal Tears for this, because he was on another podcast and he talked about how he feels about Bernie Sanders, what Bernie Sanders is doing right now. Listen to this. Neoliberal Tears, thank you. He was on a podcast called Clay and Buck. Listen to what he said about Bernie Sanders. Balls. Hold on. I gotta stop saying that. Let me refresh it. Sometimes Twitter videos do that. If it's not, it's been chilling for a minute. Here we go.
To me, over the past couple of weeks, one of the disappointing things that happened to me over the past couple of weeks that I witnessed was Bernie Sanders, who.
Oh, Eric, we may need to turn the volume up on this one because it's a little low, and then I don't know. You know how Twitter is sometimes.
That I witnessed was Bernie Sanders, who.
Thanks. And then let me know if I need to do it through if I can do it through my browser, because Twitter is just, sometimes the videos on Twitter do this. While we're doing this, if you haven't had a chance to do so, hit that like button, guys. Smash it, smash it, smash it. Peanut butter, jelly, smash it. All right, I think we got it now. Thanks, Eric. If it keeps doing it like that on Type VNC, I can put it over here. If you just let me get the link. Let's see. Yeah, I'm gonna do it on I actually don't even have to. I don't even have to maximize it. I could just play it here. Sometimes that works out better.
Things that happened to me over the past couple of weeks that I witnessed was Bernie Sanders, who.
Oh, okay. All right, I'll take it from here. Doop. Pivot over here. Paste. All right, I think it'll do it over here. Let me just share my screen really quick. Move that, present. Sometimes it does this when it's just audio. I don't know. Twitter's weird. But anyway, I think I can do it from here. All right.
One of the disappointing things that happened to me over the past couple of weeks that I witnessed was Bernie Sanders, who endorsed the president. And essentially, he's been the leader of the progressive wing of the party, and he got nothing in return. And it was very, very odd that he would do that, because he's been against war, he's been against corporatism, he's been against this merger of state corporate power that President Biden represents, with surrounded by all of his Wall Street people and his neocons and all the people who are now running the White House. And it's very, very odd to me that that Bernie Sanders would have done that. And I don't know what motivated him, but that to me is, I think, the biggest disappointment.
Well, we appreciate your.
One of the disappointing things that happened to me.
Whoops, I was muted. Sorry. What he said is that Bernie's been the leader of the progressive wing of the party. Let me come out of here. Pop this in. Let me pop this in here. Sorry. I'm just going to read it to you now. He said Bernie's been the leader of the progressive wing of the party, and he got nothing in return. He's been against this merger of state and corporate power that President Biden represents, surrounded by all of these Wall Street people and neocons who are now running the White House. And then he went on to say a little bit more. And all I have to say is, exactly, Bernie was a sellout. Exactly. And I think that just points to the powers of the party. Now, you know, the DNC did decide that they're not going to have primary debates, of course. And he did respond to that, to Joe Biden, actually. I have known and liked Joe Biden for many years, but we differ profoundly on fundamental issues such as corporate influence in government, censorship, civil liberties, poverty, corruption, and war policy, among others. I look forward to engaging him in debates and town hall meetings in a primary election that is honest, civil, and transparent. I invite him into a new era of respectful dialogue in these times of division. And I think there seems to be a little bit of I feel like it comes across a little bit naive, because the system is not set up that way. Also, he needs to stop liking Joe Biden. I don't know what it is with the peoples. I don't know why Bernie's like, Joe Biden's my friend. Marianne's like, well, Biden's done good things. Like, no. Everybody listen up. Stop being Joe Biden's friend. Okay. Stop being Joe Biden's friend. This is a fight. This is a fight. Okay. He is not your buddy. He is not your pal. Okay. This isn't even a boxing match. This is Mortal Kombat. This is how I see it. This is Mortal Kombat. You have to take the gloves fully off. That's what you got to do. This is not, I think he has a good message. I think he should have this message and run as independent. And I think he has to take the gloves off and knock Joe Biden out. Like, seriously, be Scorpion. Say, get over here. Flawless victory. That's what you got to do. Especially right now, Joe Biden is not at his best. He is not at his best right now. I told you he doesn't know where he is half the time. You got to knock him out. Don't be his friend. I don't know why everybody wants to be friends with this dude. I don't get it. Now, this is important because when we think about the donors, you have to understand that they have the final say. They are in control. And here's a clip, shout out to Case Study QB, proving exactly just that. Let's see who the donors have chosen, because that's what really matters here.
You know, I think Biden, because Biden will have the establishment behind him. I really think the establishment donor class for the Republicans is not crazy about Donald Trump. Listen, I'm not taking sides here. I'm just saying that Biden will have the establishment behind him, you know, full force. If he can make it through the campaign, obviously.
Well, there's a long way to go still.
You know, I think Biden, because Biden will have the establishment behind him. I really think the establishment donor class for the Republicans is not crazy about Donald Trump. Listen, I'm not taking sides here. I'm just saying that Biden will have the establishment behind him, you know, full force. If he can make it through the campaign, obviously.
Well,
the donors have already chosen Joe Biden. I hope everyone picks up on this. Everyone who sat down and watched this episode in person, the donors have already chosen Joe Biden. That's how it works. Just like Rupert Murdoch admitted the other day that Fox News was going to start promoting Ron DeSantis instead and move away from Donald Trump because the donors want Ron DeSantis. That's how this works, people. It's all about money. All about money. He goes on to say, even if he can make it through the campaign, that's how weak Joe Biden is. They're still trying to sell this guy. This is terrible. I can't. Now, new poll. Some of you may have seen a poll that's been going around. This came out last night where RFK Jr. is polling at 19%. I have a new poll from this morning that shows him even higher than that. This poll 2024 National Democratic Primary shows Joe Biden at 70%. I told you guys, I still don't believe that number's that high in real life. RFK Jr. is now at 21%. 21. He jumped from 14 to 19 to 21%. And Marianne's at 8%. Together, they're pulling away 29% away from Joe Biden. And remember, like I told you, I actually think Joe Biden's approval, the people who would vote for him, I think it's less than 70%. I don't believe that number. But this is not good for an incumbent president. This is not good for a president who's currently sitting in the White House to have that level of support moving away from him. Trump didn't even have that. Obama didn't have that. So pay attention, people. Pay attention. When mainstream media tells you that these are not serious candidates, obviously they're serious enough to pull away that amount of support away from Joe Biden. So what does that tell you? RFK Jr. is going to make things really messy for Joe Biden. 21%. That's just today. He's probably only going to go up from here. This is why I try to tell people, not that many people were going to care about his takes when it comes to the jab as they thought. Yeah. So let me go to some of the comments here. Thank you for the super chat, a kid. Sabby, RFK Jr. has too many blind spots. Number one, he believes Dems party can be salvaged. Why? Because innately, he's still part of the old guard of believers. I hear you, a kid. Notori says his campaign is a no-go for me. She had to coach him not to endorse JoJo. JoJo? That's what we call him, Joe Biden now, JoJo. Thank you for the super chat, Lyle. I am so thankful we have independent journalists being able to talk to candidates like him and pressing them. This might be the one chance we have left. Thank you for the super chat, GM. He looked naive when she brought that up. Very worrisome. Yeah, I don't know, man. It almost seemed like that was the first time he was hearing that. Greg Bruce says the Democratic Party gave up so many people. They're the anti-Rick Astley. You guys remember Rick Astley? Never gonna give you up, let you down. The Oracle says, what the actual boop, Shama Sawan. Thank you for the super chat, Lyle. Someone in the comments said Jimmy tried pressing RFK Jr. already, but it wasn't landing. I remember the interview. Well, Kim landed that part. I mean, I haven't, watched the whole interview, but she landed that part. Matt says hashtag AfroMan 2024. I did. I rickrolled you. I did. I'll take the comments on Rockfin. Let you down. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Scott. RFK Jr. has to realize he's against the same system that killed his uncle and his father. Yes. Yeah. And thank you for the tip, Skip M. Run independent with 1/3 of Congress on an independent slate. That's the only way Hennon gets anything done. He can get anything done, maybe. And thank you for that. Finish him. Oh boy. Okay. I just have to finish Nevada for ballot initiatives, and then I'm going to head out. We're going to do call in tomorrow night. Eric, let me know when you have the poll ready. I only have one more question ready for Nevada, and then I'll be ready for the poll results. So we'll see that. I'll come back to it. Okay, let me finish up Nevada here. So the last question for Nevada ballot initiatives, make sure I'm at the right one. Is this the voting initiative one? Yes, it's the voting initiative one. All right, we're finishing up Nevada here. This is question number 3. Top 5 ranked choice voting initiative. A yes vote supported establishing open top 5 primaries and ranked choice voting for general elections, which would apply to congressional, gubernatorial, state executive official, and state legislative elections. This passed by 52.94%. So, we've talked about this before. One way for third party and independent candidates to become more viable is to have ranked choice voting. So Nevada actually passed that. When Andrew Yang was here, he talked about that. So let me go on here. It says top 5 primaries, establishes top 5 primaries for partisan office. This includes office of United States Senator, U.S. Representative, Governor, Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, Secretary of State, State Treasurer, State Comptroller, state legislators. However, this excludes office of presidents of the United States and vice presidents of the United States. So that's important to note. And it says a person could become a candidate for office regardless of party affiliation or lack thereof. Any registered voter could cast a primary candidate for any candidate, regardless of the party affiliation of the voter or of the candidate. The 5 candidates receiving the greatest number of votes in the primary election would advance to the general election. If there were 5 or fewer candidates running for office, the primary election would still be held and the results made public. If one of the top 5 candidates withdraws, disqualifies, or dies after the primary election, but before 5 p.m. on the 4th Friday in July, the candidate that received the next greatest number of votes at the primary election would be made a nominee and would advance to the general election. Ranked choice voting establishes ranked choice voting for general elections for partisan office. And under this measure, all general elections for partisan office would be conducted by ranked choice voting. Again, it includes those same ones that I mentioned before. Now, a voter could choose to rank just one candidate for office, and that vote would be tabulated. Under this measure, if a voter has assigned the same ranking to more than one candidate, that ballot would be considered inactive. If a ballot skips a ranking, then the election board would count the next ranking. If the next ranking is another skipped ranking, the ballot would be considered an inactive ballot for that race. Any votes made for none of these candidates would be tabulated, recorded, and made public, but not counted for purposes of ranking. If there is a tie between 2 final candidates, the winner would be decided in a manner as provided by statute. If there is a tie between 2 candidates with the fewest votes, the eliminated candidate would be decided by lot. Who supported this? Institute for Political Innovation, Represent.us, Vote Nevada. One of the arguments that was made is that fortunately, by implementing a ranked choice voting system, the proposed reform will free voters to support independent candidates without the fear of aiding another party. To this end, Nevadans can expect the new system to result in a diverse field of candidates more capable of producing a system of representation consistent with the sentiments and interests of a true majority. Who also supported this? Oh, I think that's there twice. And who opposed it? Senators Catherine Masto, Jackie Rosen, Mark Amodi, and Governor Steve Sisolak. And that's bipartisan, guys. So you had Democrats and Republicans who opposed it, of course, because it's not for their party. It would actually hurt them. That's why they opposed it. Unions, Nevada State AFL-CIO, and organizations who opposed it, Americans for Tax Reform, Battle Born Progress, and Let Nevadans Vote. That's interesting. Let Nevadans vote, but you don't want them to do ranked choice voting. That doesn't make any sense. One of the arguments was enshrining this system in Nevada's state constitution would make a mistake because meaningful access to the ballot box is too critical to our system of representative government to sacrifice at the altar of an unproven, unwieldy experiment. They're actually talking about representation, but they only want certain people to be represented. That doesn't make any sense. They just knew it would hurt their bottom line. That's what this is really about. So, yeah, there was a lot of money spent to support this initiative. Over $23 million was spent to support it. And to oppose it, over $2 billion was spent to oppose it. I think about what all that money could do if that money went into mutual aid instead. This is why you need to see the dollar amounts that are spent on these initiatives, especially to oppose it, because this is money that could have been used. You could have built clinics with this money. We could build public clinics for people. We could build homes for people with that money. And that's pretty much a wrap, Jack. So lots of money spent there. Roger added a little bit of commentary. I wonder why AFL-CIO was against it. Maybe it's because they're afraid their members will apply to them. I was kind of surprised to see a union oppose that as well. That was interesting. All right, let's check out those poll results. Are you concerned about the US dollar? 68% of you said yes, 24% said no, and 8% said you are not sure. That was 634 votes. That's interesting. Interesting. All right, guys, tomorrow, just a reminder, I'm going live at 6 p.m. Eastern time tomorrow because Kim is coming on around that time. And then I will also be live on RBN earlier as well, 2 p.m. Eastern time. And Lucy's going to come on and we're going to talk about strategy in reference to electoral politics because she's got some things to say. And I think that her and Roger have a good plan. Thank you for the super chat, Roger Rockfin. Okay. Let me do Rockfin. Thank you for the tip on Rockfin, Roger. Dude, she's just not into you anymore. She went for the money. I'm not saying she a gold digger, but she ain't messing with no broke. Okay. I don't know what you're talking about, but okay. So yeah, don't forget, tomorrow, 6 p.m. Eastern time, Kim will be here and I have 2 news stories. So it should be fun. Fun things. And I'll go ahead and announce this as well. Eric, my producer, and Corey are going to be on Hardlands Media tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern time. And they're going to talk about 11 demands. So don't miss that. That'll be with Kit. Other than that, guys, I'm heading out of here. We'll do call-in tomorrow night after the show. So it'll be earlier. I think you guys will like that because my call-ins go pretty late. So it'll be earlier call-in. If I'm starting at 6, I'll probably get done around 8. So we'll start call-in around 8. And yeah, it'll be an earlier call-in for you. Anywho's, it is time for me to skadoozle. So alrighty, you guys know how we do this. Have a good night. Keep up the fight.